again. Maddie insists that what happened wasn't a dream, it was real. They decide to go to the police and report what Maddie saw. They meet with Detective Kakoa, who is in charge of the case involving her husband's death. Maddie explains that she saw the person who attacked her commit another murder. Sydney tries to convince the detectives, explaining that Maddie was able to pinpoint the location of the second crime scene because there was a distinctive sign in front of the building, and it was on the top floor. She found the place using Google and asks the detectives to check it out, offering to accept responsibility if there was no crime and they were wrong. Kakoa and Ridge are forced to investigate, and upon arriving at the location, they find an apartment on the top floor with the door open. After searching the apartment, they discover Victor's body brutally murdered, confirming Maddie's story and proving she isn't crazy. Maddie tries to describe the killer she saw, but Ridge doesn't believe her because the description seems too cinematic. Maddie then goes to the bathroom, where she receives a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end tells her that her real name is Emily, and that when her adoptive mother took her in, she changed her name to Maddie. The voice confirms that Maddie knows who it is and that it will take revenge on everyone who tried to convince her it wasn't real. Finally, Maddie says the name Gabriel and pleads with it not to kill anyone else. It becomes clear that there is a long-standing connection between Maddie and Gabriel from her childhood. Gabriel then hangs up, and Maddie leaves with Sydney, planning to leave the house. Meanwhile, Kakoa asks his colleague if he has finished aging the picture, and his colleague tells him it's on his desk under the files. Kakoa looks at it and realizes that May is actually Maddie, who was one of Dr. Weaver's patients before her adoption. Maddie rushes to her adoptive mother with Sydney to ask if she knows who Gabriel is. Her mother shows her a video from her 9th birthday, where Maddie was talking to an imaginary friend named Gabriel. Gabriel spoke to her often, and her family initially thought he was just a harmless imaginary friend. However, they began to fear him when Maddie's mother became pregnant with Sydney, and they overheard Maddie telling Gabriel not to hurt the baby because it was her sister and she loved her. Over time, they heard less about Gabriel and assumed Maddie had forgotten him, guessing that he was somehow connected to a part of her past they didn't know about. At the same time, Kakoa continues to dig through Dr. Weaver's files until he finds a flash drive where Dr. Weaver talks about Maddie's condition deteriorating. Maddie, whose real name was Emily before her adoption, had sought help from top doctors, including Victor and John. Kakoa realizes that John might be Gabriel's next target. Maddie is in the bathroom washing her face when she looks in the mirror and suddenly sees John reflected instead of herself. The room changes, and Maddie finds herself in John's house, unable to move. She watches as John is in his bathtub, and Gabriel emerges from Maddie's back, holding the knife. Kakoa rushes to John's apartment, but it's too late. He finds John murdered. Gabriel, who hasn't left the apartment yet, attempts to kill Kakoa but fails. Kakoa manages to avoid the attack and strikes Gabriel, forcing him to flee. As Gabriel runs away, Kakoa notices that Gabriel's movements are odd, as if something is wrong with his posture. Kakoa chases Gabriel through the city, but Gabriel eventually disappears. The next day, Kakoa visits Maddie to tell her that the 3 doctors who were killed had been working together on her case before her adoption. Since Maddie has no memory of her childhood, Kakoa arranges for her to see a psychiatrist specializing in hypnosis and memory retrieval. The psychiatrist tries to help Maddie, and Maddie begins to recount her childhood struggles due to the things Gabriel would make her do. Gabriel could control her actions, and no one believed that someone else was causing the problems, thinking Maddie was the only one responsible. Gabriel often communicated with her through her toy phone, eventually gaining enough control over her that one day, she found herself holding a knife, about to kill the baby in her mother's womb. At that moment, Maddie starts screaming, blaming Gabriel for everything. The doctor quickly wakes her from the hypnosis before she can break down from all the screaming. Maddie tells them that she remembered everything that happened to her in the past. She recalls waking up in different places without knowing how she got there, and how Gabriel wanted to kill the baby because he knew that with the baby's presence, he would disappear. Maddie would have a sister and a friend, and she would forget about him, which is exactly what happened until Gabriel returned. At the same time, the tour guide, who was tied up on the roof, manages to free herself and tries to escape. However, she falls from the rooftop, landing in front of Maddie and the detectives. Maddie is arrested on suspicion of being the killer, with the police believing that everything she said was fabricated to divert suspicion. They search the house and find the murder weapon and Gabriel's clothes on the roof. Maddie is interrogated to make her confess to the crimes, but she insists on her innocence. During her outburst, the lights around her explode, and Detective Kakoa receives a call on his phone from Gabriel. Gabriel taunts them, saying that Maddie doesn't even know that he has been with her in the same house all along, and that he was a figment of her imagination, something she used to call the devil. Sydney then visits her mother to retrieve Maddie's adoption records and contacts the orphanage where Maddie was once placed. She learns that Maddie had been at Simeon Hospital. Sydney drives to the now abandoned hospital, which had been deserted since the 1990s. She searches the records and finds Maddie's file. She also discovers a videotape of a woman named Serena May, who turns out to be Maddie's biological mother. Sydney watches the tape with her mother and learns that Serena handed her daughter over to the hospital because she had been raped, resulting in the pregnancy. Although Serena continued with the pregnancy, she knew she couldn't care for the child. It turns out that Serena is the tour guide Gabriel had tied up on Maddie's roof, and she had been living in the same house as Maddie without Maddie's knowledge. Serena falls into a coma due to her fall, and Detective Kakoa learns that Serena is Maddie's real mother. Sydney also watches a second tape from 1992, where Dr. Weaver explains that they plan to get rid of Gabriel. Gabriel is revealed to be a parasitic twin attached to the back of Maddie's body. He was an extreme type of malignant tumor, consisting of tissues, hair, teeth, and bones, almost like an underdeveloped conjoined twin. Gabriel was feeding off Emily, Maddie's birth name, and had the ability to control her mind, making her see what he wanted her to see. Though Maddie was living her life normally, Gabriel was using her body to commit all the murders. This led Dr. Weaver and her team to decide to remove the malignant tumor, Gabriel, from Maddie's body. However, the problem was that Gabriel had integrated with some of Maddie's vital organs, so they couldn't remove him entirely. Instead, they buried what remained of Gabriel inside Maddie's body, where he remained dormant until something triggered his return: Derek's assault on Maddie when he slammed her head into the wall. Meanwhile, Maddie is placed in a holding cell with other inmates who start attacking her, believing she's weak and unable to defend herself. But Gabriel begins to take control of Maddie's body, emerging from the back of her head, and proceeds to kill all the other inmates. A guard tries to intervene, but Gabriel kills him as well and takes his key to escape from the cell. At the same time, Sydney calls Kakoa to inform him of everything she has learned about Gabriel and Maddie, explaining that Gabriel reappeared because of Derek's attack on Maddie. She urges him to go to Maddie immediately, but Kakoa is skeptical until he hears gunshots at the station. Dr. Winnie, who is also in the station's evidence room, hears the commotion and hides before Gabriel finds his weapon and clothes. Gabriel then starts killing everyone in the station with his enhanced speed and strength, making it impossible for anyone to stop him. He eventually escapes the police station and heads toward the hospital where Serena is being treated, intending to finish her off. Sydney, knowing Gabriel would go there, rushes to the hospital. When she arrives, she finds the power out, and as soon as it returns, she sees Gabriel standing in front of her. He prevents her from closing Serena's room door to protect her, intending to kill Serena. Meanwhile, Maddie can see everything happening, but is paralyzed and unable to move. Just as Gabriel is about to kill Sydney, Serena awakens from her coma and tries to reason with him, apologizing for abandoning him and saying that he is just as much her child as Emily is. Before she can finish, Kakoa arrives and shoots at Gabriel. But Sydney tries to stop him, knowing that hurting Gabriel also hurts Maddie. Gabriel then throws a knife at Kakoa, knocking him out of the room, and overturns a bed on Sydney to kill her as well. Sydney continues talking to Maddie, hoping she can hear her, telling her that Gabriel was responsible for the deaths of all her unborn children because he was feeding on them to rebuild himself. That's why he was able to return. Maddie fights to regain control of her body, eventually succeeding. Gabriel shoots Sydney in the head, then turns to kill Serena in her bed. However, suddenly, the room around him changes, and Maddie appears before him. She tells him that she now has the power to control him just as he once controlled her, and that she will lock him away in her mind. If he ever tries to escape again, she will be ready for him. Maddie traps Gabriel in her mind, regains control of her body, and saves her sister, revealing that Sydney wasn't actually killed. What Gabriel saw was all in his imagination. Maddie apologizes for everything that has happened, telling Sydney that she will always love her. She has finally succeeded in controlling Gabriel, preventing him from taking over her life ever again. That wraps up our movie for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to support us with a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any new content. See you next time. Goodbye.